Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Remixing Politics and Culture with me, your host, Pam. I'm a public relations and marketing professional with a passion for social justice, voter advocacy, and culture. And last week, we didn't have a show due to the fact that yours truly was at the National Association of Black Journalists Convention in Chicago, otherwise known as hashtag NABJ24. What an experience it was to find my beloved organization embroiled in controversy because of you-know-who, Trump. So to discuss that, what journalism is, and the controversy that happened at NABJ 24, I have three distinguished gentlemen who, like myself, are longtime NABJ members for this discussion. First up, I have, First up, I have Rod Carter. Sorry about that, Neil. I have Rod Carter. He is an award-winning journalist and is a CBS 17 television anchor in the Raleigh-Durham market. Prior to this, Rod enjoyed a 20-year career in Tampa, Florida, as a reporter and weekend anchor at WFLA in Tampa, Florida. He is a proud Rattler and is a life member of the FAMU National Alumni Association. Rod is currently on the executive board of the National Association of Black Journalists, NABJ. He is also chair of the NABJ 50th Anniversary Committee. Rod, for years, has been the lead teacher for the NABJ FAMU Journalism Short Course. He is a proud life member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated and is its international director of publicity. Welcome, Rod.
Thank you. Such a pleasure to be here, Pam, my sister.
Absolutely. Okay, and next up I have, now it's Neil's turn. That's never happened to me before. Next up we have NABJ Hall of Famer Neil Foote. The organization recognized his numerous accomplishments over his storied career. He is the University of North Texas's Mayborn School of Journalism, also selected him as a recipient of its top award, the C.E. Shuford Hall of Honor. He has worked as a journalist for the Miami Herald and the Washington Post. He served as the diversity executive for the American Society of Newspaper Editors. Neil is the founder and COO of the Tom Joyner BlackAmericaWeb.com and later Joyner's director of communications for all of his businesses, including the Tom Joyner Foundation. Neil is also the principal of Foote Communications, LLC, an integrated marketing and public relations firm. He is an author of textbooks and currently serves on several boards and is the president emeritus of the National Black Public Relations Society. Welcome to the show, Neil.
Thank you so much. Great to be here. Looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. And last but certainly not least, okay, Ron.
Thank you so much. Great to be here. Looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. Let's see, what is happening here? Hold on. Ron?
Looks like Ron has a bad connection for us.
Let's see. Oh, I see him backstage, but I can't add him for some reason. Ron? I think he has to close out. Ron? Oh, dear. Okay, we'll have to figure that out, guys. Okay.
I'll text him and tell him to close out and start over.
Okay. All right.
It's live TV, Pam. You know, this is for real.
Ron has such a storied career, and I'm so looking forward to introducing him. He just won an award at NABJ last week.
Yeah.
Goodness. Okay. Well, you know what? When Ron comes back on, we'll reintroduce him. But in the meantime, we'll keep rolling. Okay.
He's due a whole show unto himself anyway, you know.
Yes, yes.
I mean, the man is so rich in stories and has an amazing career, and I was so glad he got recognized by NABJ. So I hope he can join the conversation today. But I know I'm not your producer, but if I were, I would say you just need to engage Ron, because he's got stories to tell that he can't even tell, probably, you know.
That's, I'm sure a lot of things are kids tell, all that stuff. But listen, let's get started, guys. Let's see. Okay. All right. So Neil, I actually was going to start the conversation with you, since you've written textbooks and all on journalism and such. I want you to define what journalism is for the audience, please.
Sure. I mean, I know we only have a limited amount of time, so I'll be succinct.
Okay.
But I think, you know, in the context that we're talking about today, and particularly post NABJ, I think the bigger question for me, and it's really actually the next piece I'm going to write about for my LinkedIn stuff. But, you know, I think there are several areas that journalism is essential in doing, right? We got to we have to hold the power into account. So whatever that is, whether that's a publicly elected official, an appointed official, an entertainer, a business leader, our job is to ask the questions, as tough as they may be, because we are, really committed to the second key point, which is seeking the truth. And the truth is asking lots of questions from various points of view without, with as limited bias as possible. Let me put an asterisk there. We're all biased. There's no such thing as objectivity. But what we can do to counter objectivity is to make sure that if we ask enough questions and talk to enough sources, then we will have enough information for people to make, to write or produce a story that viewers or readers will read and or watch and say, okay, I understand the issues. Now I'm going to make up my own mind. We've got to act independently, so no one can influence or tell us you need to write the story this way. And I'm sure we'll get into this conversation because there was some hint from my colleagues in NABJ that there was influence on how we directed the panel, why we chose the former president. Verification of facts. We know that's a critical issue in post-event, that campaign has now criticized us for being too hard and asking tough questions. That's what we do. That is what we have to do. My former coworker, I had a chance to work at the Washington Post, and I watched Bob Woodward do what he did, right? I never was as great a journalist as he was, but what did he always validate? Is you got to look at documents, you got to talk to people, you got to go to live events, you got to ask the questions, and you got to verify this information. And if we're holding power into account, then we're going to say, I'm sorry, that's not a fact. Here's the facts. Here's what's going on. And then lastly, and I'll end on this, Pam, we're going to get back to some of these issues, is the role of journalism, again, whatever form, and that form has evolved from the early days when I started in journalism, right? It was print, broadcast, which was TV and radio, right? And we were like, oh, and magazines, and it was like, oh, it's a universe. And now there are infinite almost number of choices to communicate. So, what a key role for journalism is to hold this forum for discussion and criticism and public debate in an arena that once again allows people to get good information to make decisions about the community around them. There are opinion sections, there are op-ed sections that help direct people on points of view. Good journalism, which I have this conversation all the time from folks who aren't in journalism, says, "Oh, Neil, you people don't know, you're just biased." I said, the institutions that I've ever worked for, we were dedicated to these key issues: holding power into account, seeking the truth, acting independently, verifying over and over again for information. I had editors who would send me back out of the newsroom to talk to people, to interview, to verify the information, and hold a forum for public discussion.
Right. All right. All right, Neil. Okay. So listen, Rod Carter. And I saw Ron sign on and he dipped back off again. I don't know what's going on with this connection. So hopefully he'll be back again. And yes, Shelley, there's a Rod Carter and a Ron Carter, and they are both brothers of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity. Who believes it, right?
You can only strive to be as good as the Ron Carter. That's my effort.
Okay. So listen, Rod, being a board member and all, you know, NABJ faced huge criticism for inviting Trump to our convention. And with this in mind, as Neil defined journalism, was the invitation out of order to you?
No, and you know, to be quite honest with you, it's not the first invitation that he specifically has gotten.
Right.
It's the first time he's accepted, and I don't think I know it is. You know, this organization has a storied history of advocacy for Black journalists and advocacy for journalism in general, dating back to its foundation, its founding in 1975. And the very first convention that we held in 1976, I believe, was at Texas Southern University. And one of the very first letters that went out that year was to then candidate Jimmy Carter to ask him to be a part of the conference and come and answer questions and that sort of thing. And that has continued throughout every convention we've had. Sometimes, again, those folks say no. Sometimes they say yes. And this one of the last times that we had this much of a furor, I guess is the best way to put it, was in the early 2000s when the organization invited George W. Bush to speak. And he came and participated in a panel discussion as well. And there was a lot of consternation, if you will, nice way to put it, about his being there. But to answer your question specifically, I don't think it is out of order. I mean, quite frankly, these are things that we would do on a daily basis as a journalist anyway. We are called on to go to rallies for all political candidates. We, you know, go to debates for these political candidates. So we go to all of these things. And I did see a question in the chat that said, what did we learn that we didn't learn before? One of the things that we learned that maybe people didn't get a chance to see because there was so much discussion about just his being there was he actually admitted that he would pardon January 6th insurrectionists. That was something that he had not done prior to being at this convention. He had not said that on the record, and he admitted to that on the record. So that was one of the reasons why, you know, that's one of the things that I think we all learned from it. And, you know, there were a lot of different things that went on. And, you know, in front of the scenes, behind the scenes, it was a stressful few days, especially for those of us who were on the board.
Right.
You know, and I don't think I'm out of school by saying this as well, but, you know, I think it's well documented that he intended to cancel. In fact, his campaign called with the intent to cancel on the way when they learned that PolitiFact was going to be fact checking it in real time.
Right.
Online. And so there was a lot, which is really what accounted for that long delay. It wasn't necessarily the audio issues that were brought up. Although there was an audio issue, it lasted about 5 minutes, not an hour. And so there was a lot of discussion about back and forth about to or not to go on because of the fact checking element. But anyone who's a journalist, who's ever been a journalist, knows that's what we are called to do. We present the questions, we ask, you know, the tough questions, and we get those answers, and we fact check things in real time. So I don't think it was out of order at all. In fact, it was following a great tradition of 49 years of what we've been doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, Latrice brought up this point, and Latrice is a faithful member of our audience, and she's been on the show many times, and she also has worked for the Associated Press. She says that the issue with inviting Trump to the convention is that he's repeatedly shown himself to be a bad faith actor through his actions and statements. But the issue for the organization, as you said, Rod, is that it's journalism. He was invited. You have to talk to the good as well as the bad and take yourself out of it. And as we go on further, we'll get into that as to how he was addressed and whatnot.
Well, and let me just say this too: as journalists, especially journalists of color, there's already a preconceived notion by many that we are biased on one end of the spectrum politically than the other end. I think it's safe to say that. So had we invited only Kamala Harris and not invited him, then that would have drawn an ire that I don't think we would have been prepared for. And I think as journalists, we would have looked negligent in our duties as what we do. So, you know, I tell stories, a lot of stories. I read a lot of stories that I do not like. I, personally do not enjoy reading these stories. Anytime I read a story about an elderly person taken advantage of or hurt, it bothers me. Every time I read a story about a child who's hurt or killed, it bothers me. Unfortunately, it is a part of what we do. We have to tell the story. So, inviting him to answer questions. And I personally, and I said this at a meeting earlier today, I think we are absolutely worth holding someone's feet to the fire. No matter who that person is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We are worth getting those answers. And that's why it didn't bother me that we invited him.
Right.
Well, and I think the follow-up coverage to this event, which, I wrote about this on LinkedIn, that, about in part being a PR nightmare and a PR, genius, right? And it, in some cases, certainly going into this, folks, were pretty on edge about whether this was a smart move for NABJ to extend the invitation. Now, which I think, again, I think we as journalists and NABJ need to be that much more proactive to get in front of the messaging on this. But we invited, President Biden at the time and President Trump when President Biden dropped out, an extension and an invitation was extended to the vice president. So that's as clear as day. As clear as day. So I think that got muddled in the waters there about us not inviting her or backing out on an invitation. Cut that out. We invited her. It was up to her campaign to figure out how best to fit it in. We were proceeding, and I think Rod makes a critical issue there that we've got to get, that our approach to this forum was to ask the tough questions, and there was concern and about who the panelists were and whether someone from Fox should be on the panel. Well, I would venture to say she was on the panel, and she did actually ask, a couple softball questions that unfortunately the former president just tripped all over himself in answering, only living up to his true self of, 1 point, loving and advocating the great journey of his vice presidential candidate. And then about 5 minutes later, throwing vice presidents under the bus when he was asked about, the question of the health of the presidency and his age and whether, Vance would be ready to take. And then he threw vice presidents under the bus. Oh, no, they're not worthy of anything. So I think we set the stage for a lot of good conversations in the days ahead.
And we're going to show that in a minute. Ron, who's had this technical difficulty, he wrote in the chat. And let me see if I can add him to the stage. It's still, his face isn't there now. But at any rate, he wrote in, also Trump exposed himself to thousands of African-American journalists. That was a good thing. Okay, let's see if this is Ron. Okay, Ron. Can you Ron?
Still can't hear us.
Ron. Oh, goodness. Yeah. Okay.
Technology.
This
is where in TV we'd say we take a quick break and we'll get this together.
I know, but we can't do that.
We can't do that. Yeah.
We can't do that here. Well, anyways, I'm going to keep them on and see. Ron, can you hear us? I don't know.
Yes, so. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh my goodness, I can.
Yeah,
Ron.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Let me introduce you guys to Ron Carter. Oh,
he's gone.
Guys, I can't make this up. This happens. I don't know what's happening. Anyways, okay. At least you guys know that Ron is really trying to be here, but something is happening. Right. We've got so many. Oh, goodness. We have so many comments in here in the chat. Let me see. Let's see. Many have asked if NABJ was playing chess or checkers. What are your thoughts?
So that's an interesting question. I will tell you, I know how to play checkers, but I don't know how to play chess. So I don't know if I can answer that question. But I will tell you the one thing that I am absolutely proud of most about this whole thing with NABJ is that I have covered, as many people have, Trump campaigns before and events. And I covered in 2016 the first debate, or it may have been the second debate, between he and Hillary Clinton. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but about an hour or two before that debate started, there was a Facebook Live moment where he had a Facebook Live with every woman that either did or may have possibly had relations with Bill Clinton. And it was, clearly it was a strategic move to kind of shake things up a bit. But what may have gone under the radar a little bit was that he insisted that the committee, the what do you call it? The committee who puts on the debate committee, he insisted to get those women on stage during the debate, or he wasn't going to take part in it. And so there was a lot of back and forth for a while. It wasn't like our event where it's supposed to start at 12 and it just went on till like 1 o'clock before it was solved. It was kind of before all of that. So they solved it. They started it on time. And the compromise was that the women sat in the audience instead of on the stage. He wanted them on the stage. And I'll say that I think what happened was that was the intent, was to kind of shake NABJ in the middle of getting this all done, because there was a crowd sitting there waiting. And NABJ stuck to their guns and they said, no, we're not going to not fact check this event. So if that's what you want to do, then we'll write a new script and say that you didn't want to come on because you didn't want the fact checking. And then there you go, you can leave. And so it was in that game, I don't know if it was checkers or chess or just a good old fashioned standoff, but I was proud of the fact that NABJ did not fold and give in to that. That our journalistic standards stood strong and said, no, this is what we're going to do.
And I think, and that's the good thing about this organization. Look, I was on the board many moons ago as a regional director, and there were always healthy debates about any number of issues, again, inviting the candidates, but we even got in healthy debates about who should sponsor the organization. There was an offer by the NRA at one point to sponsor events and come to our job fair, the CIA. Even now, this is going to be ironic. Even Disney and what role and influence Disney might have on the organization, and this was right when they were beginning to acquire a bunch of ABC, but this was right prior to that. So that the question was even whether we should have events. I think we were even invited as a board to go to Orlando, and there was really healthy debate about whether that was a conflict of interest, because some of us may cover the industry of entertainment industry. So fast forward, chess or checkers. I think this is the world in which we're going to live in right now. Our largest convention ever, right, Rod? 4,200. 43. Again, I remember when we did the Miami convention, we were proud. We had about 1,000 folks, and we took everyone on a cruise. So we've come a long way, which means that we are now on the radar. Whatever happened at, the questions about did Trump and again, I raised this question too. Did Trump use us and abuse us? Was this PR genius for him? Of course it was. He did everything he intended to do,
right,
for his intentions.
Yes.
For our purposes, guess what? We did everything we intended to do. We invited him. We hosted him. We asked him tough questions. And now this organization is in the conversation about one of the most historical political campaigns, the presidential campaigns in this country. And repeatedly, as that campaign, the former president's campaign continues to bring up race and questions the vice president's race, they're referencing NABJ for challenging him on being clear on what he meant by that. Yeah. That's journalism. And some people might say, and as I've had this conversation, is that advocacy, Neil? Are you guys advocates? No, we put it out there. We challenged him to a question that was in the public forum, right? When I said, what is journalism? That's an issue in the public forum. Is she a candidate that? Are you going to disavow yourself of that? Or are you going to lean into that? Say no more. We know what the conversation is.
And I do want to point out, someone said that the event was late. To be honest, it was late. You're absolutely right. But it wasn't because we did anything wrong. The audio issues that he was talking about were fixed in 5 minutes. It was late because there was an hour or so, or however long it was, of back and forth about whether it was going to happen at all. That wasn't on our end, that was on their end. So I just want to be clear that absolutely it was late, but it wasn't because we were late. Everyone was there. In fact, people started lining up to get into the event for a noon event at 10.
Yeah.
And I mean lined around the corner.
Lined around, wrapped around.
And when it came down to it, and I remember specifically because people who weren't there, who couldn't make the convention this year, a lot of my friends who work at NBC had a little Olympics thing they had to deal with, so they couldn't be there, but they were watching online and they kept texting me. So what, when is this going to start? When is this going to start? And the negotiations, I can tell you, were that he did not want, or the candidacy, I won't say him, but the campaign did not want to be fact checked in real time online by PolitiFact. And that is what it all boiled down to. That's what the delay was about. Mm-hmm. That's why it took so long, because people were still trying to figure out, they were trying to negotiate to get it down or take it off the website or whatever the case may be. But that's where the delay came in. It wasn't because we were like,
Yeah, and let me just say, many years ago, we had President Clinton come to it, and Rod had to go through this right before that. But, Secret Service is no joke, right? They did a walkthrough the day before, the night before, and they said, look, your members need to be in their seats by X time, and we're shutting the doors, right? And at that point, you are at the mercy of the candidate, or in this case. And I remember we were like, well, it was like Clinton. And that was the day during the times when we had massive lunches, and he was going to be the luncheon speaker. And I think he was probably an hour late coming because he was making campaigns. Now, did he politically manipulate us? Do candidates do this? Of course, they're candidates. They're political beings. So we're going to roll with that. In this case, I mean, and again, we know that there were key individuals in this organization who were actively working with his campaign, to negate their willingness, their wanting to manipulate what we already agreed to, and we were not backing down. I always want to, again, I know Rod's on the board; he can't say this as freely, but I'll say this. But I can tell you, there were some powerful individuals in this organization who said, we are not backing down.
That's right.
Your candidate has a choice.
That's
and
right.
If he decides not to, I've prepared to let the president of this organization inform the 1,500 or 2,000 Black journalists who've been patiently waiting that he is not available for us. You have that choice. End of story. And so, 7 minutes. That's right. She gave him 7 minutes. He was told he had 7 minutes, and that's when he finally appeared on the stage.
Yeah, that was probably my funniest moment. I was like, that's a very specific time. But, and the thing is, I mean, the Secret Service was so tight, as you guys will well imagine. Especially, it's always tight, but it was even more so because of what happened in Pennsylvania. But they said literally, if you get up out of your seat and leave to go to the bathroom, you can't leave a certain range or you can't come back in.
Right.
So, I mean, it wasn't that it started late because people were straggling in or whatever. It was late for a very specific reason. And I think
dogs too. I don't remember having dogs when Hillary came for the debates and for the conversation. I don't remember dogs.
Yeah, you may not have seen them, but I'm sure they were somewhere there. There was sweep after sweep after sweep after sweep beforehand, like to the point where they closed the kitchen, I think, in the hotel because every place got sweep. People couldn't get food after a certain time. But yeah, so it's interesting that people have a lot of opinions, and that's okay. I mean, we live in a world where everyone's opinion really should matter. But there are opinions and then there are facts. And someone in the chat said something like, couldn't reporters fact checking? Well, that's why he was so angry, because those questions started with facts.
They did. Exactly. And we can get to that, guys. But, you know, Sean, a faithful NABJer, I kept her question up here on purpose. She says, could the VP have appeared on Zoom? I didn't see you this year, Kelly, even though that didn't mean anything because there's only 4,000 of us, so I could have just missed you. But answer that question for us, Rod.
So, yes, like as we mentioned before, when the president withdrew from the race on the 21st of July, that Sunday, on Monday, bright and early, a letter went out to the campaign, the Harris campaign, to ask her to appear. And there was a lot of discussion back and forth about that. So you probably remember at one point, I think former President Trump said, you guys are going to let her appear on Zoom, but you told me I couldn't appear on Zoom. Well, the point was that we did want to be as balanced as we could. So we wanted everybody to be there. So we were trying to encourage them to appear in person. But it was, I mean, look, in all honesty, it was a lot going on. You know, she had rallies. She had, Congressman Sheila Jackson Lee's funeral to go to. And then she had to hunker down for the VP selection. So it just couldn't work out. And the offer was made to do something like the next week. But that's, kind of counterproductive since the conference ended. So it ended with we're going to do some sort of event in September. So the hope was always to get her there in person. And then when that became crystal clear that it wasn't going to happen, then we moved to the virtual format in the hope to get her there virtually. But trust me, when I'm telling you, we had a board meeting, and I don't know how we even got through the meeting because everybody kept getting up, walking out, because there was every 5 or 10 minutes, there was a new call. There was a new update. I just don't want people to think it was some haphazard decision like, oh, we'll just invite them and, oh, we'll just tell them no. No, there was a lot of stuff going on and a lot of work going on.
Right.
And even being on the board, I wasn't even privy to a lot of that because I equated to too many cooks in the kitchen. Everybody can't be in there cooking. Somebody needs to concentrate. You need a chef and a sous chef and keep it going, and then just keep us updated on what the menu is. So there were a lot of folks in who, we were getting the information as fast as we could get it, but it was changing almost as quickly. And so it was a very interesting time. I'll just be honest with you. There was so much anger and vitriol after that. Like, I literally have only been on the board since June, I think, as a secretary. And someone found all of the board members and found found my website and sent me the most hateful email that I would never repeat on a public forum, and calling me all kinds of names because there was so much anger about it. And I get it. It is a very tough decision. It is a very difficult decision when you have a candidate who's so divisive. But I think at the end of the day, and I did see this question earlier, like, what did we learn? I think we learned that, we're going to have to be more communicative as a board and a staff between each other. And that's, we've already started. Literally, I got back Sunday night, and Tuesday we had a meeting to start working on that. Because we realized that, there's some stuff that did not communicate well between everyone. And I also learned that we're journalists and this is what we do.
But here's the other
thing that day, but it really
our people need to know, being on the board, it is a volunteer position.
Absolutely.
NABJ's National Office of Employees is extremely small, people. Right. It is extremely small operation. So the majority of all of the work you see are done by very dedicated journalists and communications professionals. Trust.
And that leads directly to Nikki Mayo's question, which is a very important one.
Where's Nikki's in here.
Nikki's in there. Hey, Nikki.
Okay.
Why there were no black men or black press moderating? That is a very good question. And I don't have the answer, to be honest with you. There's a core group of people who work on this part of it to try to get all the things lined up. I know there were a lot of discussions back and forth about who would be moderating, who would be on the panel.
Yeah.
But I honestly, I cannot even answer that because I was not a part of those initial conversations. We had who was kind of reaching out to do stuff. and she kind of took a big bullet when she tried to counter some of the points on social. She took a big hit for putting herself out there. But again, like Pam said, we're all volunteers. We're just working, trying to get the best product out there for our members. And so I don't know the answer, Nikki. I really wish I could have, tell you exactly what those discussions were, but I wasn't a part of them. But I can tell you, moving forward, those discussions are very strong and have been since July 31st. I only remember that day specifically because it was my birthday. It was like, happy birthday to you.
There you go. Happy birthday.
Won't forget 56, that's for sure.
And everything broke out on Ken's birthday, our president's birthday. I felt so bad for Ken.
Because he won't forget his either.
On his birthday. It was awful.
It was
I think Rod, you hit a key point in terms of lessons learned. I mean, and again, let me just say, we've evolved as an organization. Way back in the day when there was no national office, I remember me and a handful of folks used to type. You had a typewriter, and we'd have type press releases and try to copy press releases. So we've come a long way. I think. What's clear, and I know the several members of the media task force who are really ready to jump on this and really serve as an ally to the national office. Because, guess what? This organization has the best minds in journalism. Mm-hmm. And I think the opportunity for the board and the national office is that we've got the best journalists and the best public relations professionals, the best crisis comm people that we are literally 1 degree of separation of. And I can tell you, I think we given that we have, taken the profile of this organization exponentially. I mean, we already had a high profile. I think this really puts us in the radar. I think it gives us a huge opportunity to even be more transparent, to be more proactive with our messaging. As Pam, you mentioned, right, it's part of the 50th anniversary of this organization, one of the world's largest, if not the world's largest, association of Black journalists in the country, of communicators, period. Mm-hmm. So I think we have a huge opportunity here to send a message, certainly moving forward, for any candidate. And it could be candidates other than presidential folks, because we've had those reach out to us over the years. Could be sitting presidents, could be CEOs of companies, and we've done that with them too. And I would venture to say, and the last point I'll make this, is that when the vice president decides to join us virtually or otherwise, I can tell you she will not be getting softball questions.
No.
We will be holding her accountable for her actions, her vision, her goal. And I think we should expect that from this organization, not from a mean spirit of why you hating on the sister, but if we believe we should be good journalists, then the same power we should hold to her into account. Some people have raised the question about how we're making sure that the former president's comments aren't being held accountable. But look, I think we can speak for our own Black journalists. I hope, and I think it's beginning to happen, is that what we did at NABJ gave more journalists, white, Black, or otherwise, the freedom to say, no, that's not true. Here's the truth. And there's even fodder today that the vice president's crowds are created by AI. I mean, what else are we going to hear in the next 89 days? It's going to be off the chain, folks. And yes, all the journalists here, all the PR professionals, we have to control that narrative and make sure even within our own circles, we make sure that folks are sharing facts on social, that they're not getting caught up in rabbit holes of made up stuff. So I know, Pam, you're trying to cut in, so you got Rod and I on a roll. So dive in.
I want us to address this question, and this is for you, Rod. Are there Black journalists calling for Trump to unseal his academic record, since he keeps calling VP Harris dumb? He called her another name too. I'm not going to say it on the air.
I saw that. You know what? I'll be honest with you. I don't know if there is or if there isn't. I have not seen anything as of late. But as someone pointed out, I'm sure he's not going to release those. He's not released a lot of stuff. So I haven't seen anything specific, but I certainly think it's worth being asked.
Yeah. Who will have access to the VP interview? Did we answer this already?
I don't know. I don't know that they have narrowed that down. Again, remember, there are people who are working on different things, so I don't know specifically. I've not been briefed on how that is going to work. I don't even think we have a specific date yet. It was just in September is what we were told, the last thing that I heard. So, but again, not being all in one place, we're kind of getting stuff as we get it, and so I haven't heard as of yet when that's going to take place.
Mm-hmm. Ron said Trump attempted to use NABJ to change the narrative that his campaign was floundering. He failed. He definitely failed because I'm going to be honest. He claimed that he crushed it when he was on his Truth Social, but nobody, even the GOP, nobody agrees with him. It's just been downhill since then, really and truly. Really and truly. Let's see. Also, did NABJ clarify Trump's comments regarding VP Harris not being in attendance?
Yeah, a couple of times at the very beginning, and I think at the end they repeated about when the plan was at the time for her to be there. So yeah, I mean, as much as we could. I mean, you can't always clarify everything, but I'll put that there and leave it.
Yeah. I love the comment. I'm glad you were there with the real supporters in Detroit, because that's true. And listen, I just can't stress that. That's what we have to do. And I'm trusting NABJ and its leadership is going to try to stay in front of. We just got out of the conference. The office is on vacation. The board's trying to catch its breath, and I know how hard it is after the convention because again, it's a volunteer board, so they all have day jobs too, right? But the point is, the questions. These are great questions that we should continue to raise. We should, if you're in Raleigh, you should be shooting some questions to Rod and wherever your local journalists are to say, hey, look, I saw that report you did, and it was missing X, Y, and Z in your report about the former president. Why don't you add this, or have you even considered to talk about some local people about whatever that issue is? It's race, culture. What's mixed race mean? Why are we having this conversation in 2020? What does mixed race mean? We have to define mixed race. Get out of here. We're mixed race. This entire country is built on mixed race.
Someone in the comments make that comment earlier, but like no logical person would question that. Like if you just stop and think, people are who they are. Their heritages are very different. I did see one thing that I did. Lori Washington wanted to point out that no one's controlling the narrative.
Yes.
That's what those of us who are not professional journalists perceive. And Lori, you hit the nail on the head, because the problem is now what we see a lot of folks who are pundits and a lot of networks pick a side and they just harp on that side. And it bothers me. It's one reason why I very rarely watch like those major networks like cable news, because I think it's become so partisan that you can't even see the objectivity. And that's a difference in what was going on there and what was going on in NABJ.
Yeah.
I think you had just, the hope and the effort was to just ask questions that were hard-hitting questions. And I like Nikki, you're right. This ain't the first time he's done that. He's gotten hammered by journalists, Black journalists specifically, with hard questions for years. And, we knew, I think we all knew, no matter where he is or what he's speaking on, that's who he is and what he's going to do. But it still does not abdicate us from the responsibility of asking. It's
right. Right. And Bonnie says, we all know our Bonnie, the NRA seems to be always hovering around NABJ. Ooh, I didn't know that. I hope not.
Well,
yeah, I'm not sure some of our members are card-carrying members. That's just the way it is, and that's okay, right? That's what we're humans, and we reflect probably a broad range. Yeah, I think the issue here is, again, how do we represent ourselves? How best do we get in front of the messaging? if we're a communications organization and we believe in the truth getting out, then every opportunity we have to use our own tools, and again, social media is part of that, right? That has changed the dynamic of who you believe and who you don't believe. And unfortunately, we live in a world of confirmation bias where people will only believe from what they want to believe in. But I think, our role again as journalists, if we do it well, and even if you're not a journalist, and you're just a good citizen, I hope you will take the time to question power, question authority, question journalists, and make sure that your local newspaper, your local TV station, your local radio station, your local blog, or whoever that is held into account for fomenting hate, fomenting false information, and really you do the fact checking for them. Because someone asked earlier about how do we do that in the era of AI. Well, look, I can tell you the original document and the original image is out there in the domain if we're going to look at it. And we've got enough tools and enough fact checking that can be done to corroborate that information.
Mm-hmm. There's something I wanted to point out too, because one of the things that Nikki said, or Ron said, that they're creating a system that some of the media related members who are experts in crisis communication will lead the effort. And Nikki, amen that. And I agree. That was one of the bigger issues for me coming out of it, is this kind of, as I said earlier today in another meeting, kind of laid bare those issues that we have with internally as an organization. Again, a lot of us are volunteers, and then there's a small staff that works on stuff. So the communications folks, that's a small department. So we can't combat a machine. Like, for example, one of the big things that happened was people were angry because I think the Trump campaign tweeted out first that he was coming and we didn't. It's because they move like that. They have a big group of people. And so, with a lot of organizations that are big like ours too, and you don't have as many people working in office, it's like this person's got to read it and check it, and they got to check it, and it creates this delay. So that is one of the things that I'm excited about as we move forward as an organization. We had this conversation Tuesday, right after the conference, about what can we learn from this change and move forward. And so there are lots of things that are happening that we're going to try to put into place to make sure that we, learn from this and mitigate it. You're always going to have stuff that comes up, but you can mitigate some of this as much as possible. And then last thing, and I'll shut up. The question about any of the panelists surprised at all Black people who are questioning VP Harris's race. I'm not.
Mm-mm.
I'm not surprised. That people don't surprise me much anymore. It takes a lot.
We were screaming in the back. Yeah. We were like, what? And then it was just this incredible laughter and stuff and squeals. It was like, dude, the blacks. I mean, he was just he was so ridiculous. The only thing that was different about him than being on TV is he wasn't as orange as you normally see him. He wasn't orange. But it was weird being in that space. It really was.
I mean, I didn't think it was weird only because I've been to
events before.
Many years of pre-politics, many years ago, pre-politics.
Yeah. Ron wanted to say that he tried to create confusion by saying we were late and owed to colored people time. Of course he did. He is the author of confusion as far as I'm concerned. Let's see.
Well, yeah, I think, Terry Allen mentioned about us, and I did earlier about us going up on our 50th anniversary. I think we have an opportunity as an organization to be one of the go-to organizations for any political candidate, presidential candidate in the country. Mm-hmm. Right up there with NAACP, Urban League, whatever else, National Anthem. If anything, I believe we've done is we've now said, look, we need to be part of that conversation. We need to be part of that conversation.
That is.
What's that?
If you're not scared to come see us, that is, because nobody's getting softball questions. And Fredia Butler says, Rachel Scott asks great questions, even while being disrespected. I want to, this Bobby Clobber one, it was late. They even said so themselves at some point out.
I think he logged out.
Yeah, I get who he is. I get it. And Ron, I'm trying to get as many of Ron's things on here. They were late because Trump was intentional on having his narrative. Correct. I want to listen, if you guys are on YouTube, please hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel, please. It's a free way to support my channel. I appreciate it. I want to share the screen on this article that I thought was very good about our conference. And I'm going to share the screen right now and show this article. Okay. Okay, here it is. It's can you guys see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The NABJ interview with Trump provides a model for media coverage. And here the ladies, the panelists, this is Harris Faulkner, this is our Rachel Scott, and this is Kadia Gorba. They were the panelists. And I really like what Jennifer, how she starts out here. The National Association of Black Journalists' invitation to former President Trump to sit for an interview last Wednesday at its Chicago convention had its critics. Don't platform him. Don't allow him to soft pedal his racism. The critics' assumption that the NABJ members were somehow being manipulated proved to be unfounded. Instead, we got the most revealing, questioning of Trump in this election cycle. In the process, the interview revealed shortcomings in news coverage of Trump's campaign thus far. And I'm going to stop sharing and go back to us. And so that just proves to me, and I won't read the whole thing. You guys can find that article at the Washington Post. But I really like how she framed that it really did. Because listen, that interview had legs. I mean, they're still talking about NABJ's interview with Trump. Still. And we're a week past the whole thing, a good week, right? So
it has defined the campaign in many ways for any number of reasons, but I think it has certainly, whether it was intentional or not, put race in the middle of this conversation, which we knew would happen anyway. Has it helped create a framework by which race was kind of directly asked? And let me reframe that the former president had an opportunity to change the narrative about his view on race and the candidate, and he chose not to. And now his vice presidential candidate have joined him in this chorus of hate speak and misinformation and false information that only allows NABJ to continue to counter that narrative and create forums, which I hope it will in the days leading up to the conversation, for us to have honest, healthy, provocative conversations about race, diversity, and its importance to this country at a time when media can't, when certainly media is having a hard time struggling, with it, and how they cover the Harris campaign, and how the general population in some circles, particularly those supporters of the former president, think it's all a menial thing that we're trying to bring up. We cannot let that happen as an organization. We cannot let that happen as journalists. It is part of the fabric of this country. It is the greatness of this country. If you watch the Olympics over the last 2 weeks, you saw it's the greatness in the world that we bring to the world. And we've got to hold everyone accountable to that as journalists and as a national organization.
Yeah. Thanks, Ron. Bobby Clobber, this show is streamed on more than just YouTube. It's on Facebook and LinkedIn. So hopefully we'll get more people that will look at it after the fact. Oh, okay. will you have the same access if he wins? I guess she's saying, will he come back to NABJ if he wins? That's up to him. You know
what? He will be invited.
Yeah.
As he has been for the years past. I doubt seriously that he'll. I worry in general about journalism, not just, Black journalists. I, of course, worry about us, but I worry in general about journalism if that happens. So,
right. Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
I mean, journalism is the fourth estate. It has to exist, guys, to maintain a democracy. And hey, Nikki, the absence of Black men, you see today's show had 3 Black men. That was by design. By design. Okay. And listen, I really don't think once we heard the explanation about how the panel came about for Trump's discussion, his interview, it was no malintent or anything like that. It just things were, the way I understood it, things were happening super, super fast, and it was just on a dime, and that's what happened.
It was slightly head spinning fast, actually.
Right. That's what I.
Terry said, utilize this to amplify the application from this event and keep winning. I agree. I think if we have to take, and this is every conference, but more so this one because of, what happened. We have to take what we have experienced and formulate a plan to learn from that and grow from it. And I'm proud to say that we didn't dilly-dally and go, okay, see you guys in October and we'll talk about this. We talked, kind of a subcommittee, if you will, just days after. I mean, we talked about it throughout the whole time, but afterwards we started to formulate a plan so that we can create a better way to handle all of this and how we do this. But I think overall, just in general, man, I've had for years of being a part of NABJ, people asking me like, what is NABJ? What do y'all do? I'm hoping that what they now see, now they don't say, what is NABJ? They go, are you a member of NABJ? Because they know what it is. And we got that from all of the attendees at Lollapalooza at some point, I think. So I think it does give us, a bit more recognition in a broader spectrum. And I'm hoping and praying that we use that, to project more of what we do to folks so they know. I mean, NABJ is not just about a convention. That's a big highlight of the year, but every year we advocate for journalists in newsrooms across the country. We honor our own. We recognize students. We groom students to be great journalists. We talk to them daily about, mentoring and all that good stuff. During the pandemic and since, really, we have assisted journalists who were financially impacted by the pandemic when they were getting laid off. So there's a lot of stuff that NABJ does that really helps everyone. You know what I mean? And so I think this is an opportunity for us to showcase more of what we do, because we're certainly defined by more than just one 35-minute interview.
Right.
Yeah. And I would say, and I know we're trying to wrap up, but I would say, thanks, Nikki, for keep on asking those questions. Keep on, asking our board members of NABJ those questions. But I would also offer an opportunity for anyone, wherever you are, that we are at a critical point in this country's history for any number of reasons. We're at a critical point in journalism. And if we want to live up to some of those principles, look, I've crossed the lines of journalism, public relations. I've sold newspaper ads. So I've been on every side of this. And what I do know is that people actually, when you challenge them to say, do you want a free press? Well, what do you mean? I said, would you prefer that all your news and information come from the government, the mayor, the city officials? No. So then we need a free press. If you look at a map of the world, most of it is red because there's no free press in the world. Interestingly enough, the U.S. is in yellow. So we're kind of on that tipping point. But my point is, let's use these these days ahead to create forums by which we can engage other journalists, other community members to help us understand the importance of what we do, of fact checking, of providing good information, of having healthy conversations. Because look, healthy conversations is good, whether you agree or not, but we should be able to have forums by which we can comfortably disagree with each other and agree fervently. But let's create those forums. Let's use the power that we have to really use that moving forward.
Absolutely. Fennell asks, do you think that reporters hold Democrats to a higher, more critical standard?
I mean, I don't think we do. I would love to believe, and I'll just be honest with you, like any other organization, like any other profession, there are really good people and there are really not so good people who do the job. So I would like to believe as a whole, we, in general, hold everybody to the same standard. I would love to believe that. But there are some not so great actors who are journalists. That's just the bottom line. And that's, true whether we want to accept it or not. But I think it's incumbent upon those of us who believe in those higher standards to try to counter all of those narratives as well. So,
well, and to the point, we live in a world where everyone can be a journalist or so-called, right? And unfortunately, as long as you have that, then you can report whatever you want. And unfortunately, those people, to the point that I think Zachary just put in the chat, again, it's confirmation bias. He can, the former president can say things to his base that he used NABJ as a platform to rile them up and really, help, solidify his base. And look, let's not be foolish. The vice president is doing the same thing. She's got to, right? These are political candidates. They're not journalists. They have a means to an end, right? Yeah. As journalists, or candidate, do journalists? Never in my career as a journalist did I have or was I advised by an editor, or whether I knew it was in my instinct to ask a different question to a Republican than a Democrat. It was kind of like, I'm asking you the same question that I would ask him based on him or her, whatever that political affiliation based on the story is, because I got to get the story. Is that the same in news organizations nowadays? No, it's different. And that's the truth. Depending on where you look at there now, broadcast news operations who are, who believe that it's okay to be, unabashedly a partisan just because. And I hope we are better than that in the long run.
I mean, there is a company that requires every one of the stations in their company to air pro GOP Trump stories. They have to run them. And that's what made me laugh about everybody, like journalists who were so indignant about having him there. I'm like, but I bet if you got assigned to go to that rally, you'd have to go. So what's the difference? You know what I mean? But I want to point out one comment that Black Women Speak wrote. The press is not free as long as we're dealing with algorithms. People are unfortunately being fed what they believe in confirmation bias. And I hope we can find that is the crux of what we deal with right now. Because so many people have this platform and they can get online and create something that they think is news. Like I asked a young person once, like where they watch their news, and they said they watch the news on TikTok.
Yeah.
And there's some stations who probably post stuff on TikTok, but
that's true.
I don't think what they're thinking is news. And that's what we have to combat as journalists, what true journalism really is. And that's, quite frankly, that's just hard to do. It's hard to do these days. So
Stephen Valentine asks, how did Sister Harris Faulkner of Fox News get a voice at the conference? I found out today, Stephen, that she once was a member of NABJ, and she actually was in this market, according to Brett. Brett knew her. I'm not sure, but it's like with anything else, when you're doing these platforms and stuff, there's some negotiations as to who's asking the questions and whatnot. And I want you guys to bear in mind that Rachel Scott with ABC News is an outstanding reporter. And I'm not just saying that because of what she did on the stage at the NABJ conference, but Rachel has covered many rallies for President Trump, for former President Trump, and professionally, the whole nine. And so when she got up there and she started rattling off the things that he said, she was stating facts. And I found out today, Rod, were you there at that fireside chat that Rachel was on with Joy Reid?
No, I wasn't in that one. No.
Okay, Rachel Scott was at a fireside chat called Champions of Change, fireside chat on Black media, building trust and combating misinformation. And Joy Reid, Rachel Scott, Leroy Chapman with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Errol Barnett, an anchor and correspondent with CBS News, and Sophia Marshall, a senior VP of communications at Comcast. They were all on there. And according to one of our esteemed colleagues at a local NABJ meeting we had earlier today, this Sunday, Rod and I, Rachel stated that she was prepared. She wanted to make NABJ proud. She studied him. She had reported at many of his rallies, and she knew what to expect from Trump. And she was ready to go and willing to ask those questions, the hard questions, and she did.
Yeah.
And we salute her for doing so. And yes, she did make us proud.
And to answer Terry's question, I don't know if she's still getting death threats, but she did get a number of them. And I can tell you the organization has reached out to her, I'm sure daily, if not daily, every other day, to check and make sure that she is okay. You know, it's a strong base she was kind of up against with her questions. And so it's understandable that would happen. And we're just praying that, you know, she is safe wherever she goes and that, you know, folks are watching out for her. And to Latrice's point, Latrice Davis, yes, fake news and alternative facts, that was an intentional from the very beginning. I remember putting together a panel discussion for my Tampa NABJ chapter years ago about what is fake news, just so because it was emerging, and so we wanted to talk about that. And that all of that stuff is absolutely intentional to sow seeds of distrust, so that you, meaning you as in all of us, don't believe what we see.
Our lying eyes.
Our lying eyes.
Nikki brings up this very important fact, and we would be remiss. Nikki, thanks so much for stating this. Reminder: Black journals asked Trump tough questions is not new. That she is absolutely correct. The journals covering Trump since 2016 have been asking him tough questions and taking the blowback. Let's not take away from their work. We will not. I will tell you, I can't remember what city our convention was in when NABJ gave April Ryan the floor to discuss what happened to her as a White House correspondent when Trump said something crazy to her, as he says to people, and then she started getting death threats, and she had to hire security for both she and her children. And I will say that a lot of her criticism of NABJ with him coming, I think I can't speak for her, but I feel like it was like a trigger response of what she went through several years ago.
Which is understandable.
It's totally
really is understandable.
Absolutely. And Yamiche Elson, Yamiche took heat from him as well.
Both of them did, yeah.
Yes.
You know, at the end of the day, you know, I had the pleasure and probably slight ignorance as a child, I say, as an intern. When I was in my junior year in college, I was interning at a station, and I got the chance to cover Shirley Chisholm. She was speaking at an event at Florida State, and I got a chance to interview her. And anybody who knows TV knows it was like one of those quick run in, grab a VOSOT, run out kind of things. But, you know, I don't even remember what the topic was that we were talking about, but she said something that has never left me. And that was, we as a people have to learn to disagree without being disagreeable.
Yes.
And I think that was in my mind all of week before last, because I'm okay with the disagreement. I just want us to always remember that everybody's opinion needs to be respected. And so I think at the end of the day, we learned some valuable lessons, and we have a lot more to implement to get where we need to be a better organization, and we'll get there. But I think we can't not ignore the elephant in the room. In this case, literally the elephant in the room. We have to ask those questions. We have to be tough. We have to hold folks accountable, and it ain't always pretty.
No.
But it's necessary.
Right. This is a good question. You guys are really jumping in this chat, boy. It's so many things in here. I can't. As the election nears, how will you verify in the age of AI?
Yeah, and that's I said that earlier. I mean, AI is here, and any one of us can use it to create images, to create content. At the end of the day, we can fact check anything. Here it is, a candidate, the former president, saying that audience is not those large audiences don't exist for the vice president. We already have one fact check right now that says, guess what? That they were in that audience, and I'm sure that if we made about 10 calls to any of the markets, Detroit, Wisconsin, Arizona, that we could verify through police records, through security, that there were real people there, and that were the photos that were taken by the hundreds of journalists that tag along a presidential candidate. And you've seen broadcast journalists, cell phone, mobile journalists, they're all there. So they're factoring. So how are we diligent? Here's the issue with that, right? Some of us in this conversation, we're going to be a little bit more diligent than everyone else because that's our nature. Those voters that the former president's reaching out to, they're going to believe anything he says, right? If he says she was the devil reincarnated, then they're going to start posting images of her as the devil. Right. Yep. So we have to take our job seriously to say, no, I'm sorry. Here's her life story about her family background, her racial identity, her journey through, which is fully in the public domain because she's been in the public domain for years, just as his information has been in the public domain for years. And let's be the one who says in our Twitter feeds or in our Facebook feeds, or X feeds, and IG feeds, our conversations, our informal chats to say, no. Here's the facts. That's not true. Don't share that anymore. Okay. And we've all seen stuff that we've had to check our friends about. It's like, no. And look, it could be the same thing for the vice president. It could be like, that's not true. That's something she said over and over again. That's not, let's get it. If we're going to do it for that person, we need to do it for that person. But the other person clearly is going to use anything. And our fear is that, yes, he will lean into AI over the next 80 days to create all sorts of havoc and confusion through early voting and right up on election day. And we have to be super diligent as citizens, as journalists, as PR professionals to check that repeatedly. So AI is not going anywhere. How bad actors use it is where it goes wrong. As good actors, like all the people in this conversation today, we have to use it to the good to say that's not what the case is.
Right.
And with pictures, I always say, check the fingers.
Yes.
Most people don't have six thumbs.
Right.
You can tell that's wrong.
You really have to check those things. And some of them you can really tell off the bat that they're not. They look too perfect and what have you. Did anybody see this that Nikki put in here about most newsrooms decided in 2017 to stop it?
There was a conscious decision after the 2016 election that lessons learned that they would not cover the future presidential campaigns in the same way that they did in 2016. They fell in that trap in 2020, and the same thing has happened now. So and sadly, those events, so that has not changed, and that I would venture to say that if we put a panel of news directors or presidents of news, they would say, well, if it drives the audience, then we're gonna drive it. You know, we're gonna run it. So do they run live streams of the vice president's campaign and not? And do they just run live streams of the president's campaign, the former president's campaigns, and not the vice president? Then we've got an issue, and that we should all challenge any news organization who decides to do that. That's wrong. They're going to do that for one. They need to do that for other. But whether they should do that at all is, to me, not good journalism.
So here's my thought on that question. Again, this is not speaking for the board because I wasn't privy to these discussions. Just my thoughts about that. I think the difference in carrying a live speech and a live Q&A is vast. It's vastly different.
Yeah,
he's answering questions versus just getting up talking for like an hour and a half or whatever. So I think it was a little bit different. And from my take, it didn't bother me that it was streamed live, and because it was streamed live, it was fact check live. So that online fact checking was an element for sure that needed to be there. But it is a good question that I think needed to be asked too. Do we want to do this in real time? But I'll tell you that I think it was Fox was there, and they were carrying the thing live too. And PBS, I know, because people were texting me saying that they were watching the live PBS stream, and they switched over to Fox because I guess PBS cut away until it started. So yeah, I think we all say we're not going to do it, and then you turn around and do it. Just my thought.
Yeah, Ron was saying we need to be we're a multi-million-dollar organization. We have to be more strategic with our external communications, and I believe that was one of the big lessons of NABJ this year. And
we're working on that.
And we will be. I have no doubt about that. His cult just eats that fake news crap up. Zach, this chat is just huge. NAB brand is now etched in global public square. We have to manage our new notoriety. Project 2025 met Project NABJ, and we won. Thank you. Oh, you guys have been, I hope you guys on YouTube have been hitting that thumbs up. And listen, share this video, please. The whole reason why I even started this channel really is to disseminate important information, valuable information, and whatnot. And if you disseminate it, I would be very, very grateful. And to hit the thumbs up wherever you're listening from, whether it's YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook. And if you're on YouTube, please subscribe and help my channil. Oh, the press is not free. Okay, you guys must have seen some of the.
I was looking at them on the side. Sorry, I was jumping ahead of
No. It's just so. Look, it's too many. It's just, you know what?
Everybody's been on point. It's great. Great comments and great. And I think Rod and I have been addressing some of them in our comments along the way. So we're good, man. You're good.
This dialogue has been amazing.
From you, that is like the biggest hug and kiss ever. I gotta post our picture. I haven't finished posting all my pictures from the conference, but thank you, because I really don't know what I'm doing. I'm just
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. This is produced better than some newscasts, I think. But no, I think this conversation is what we need, to continue to grow as journalists. So I think it's fantastic. That's why I didn't mind doing it all. In fact, I wanted to. Although I'm gonna tell you, after that business meeting, when I got yelled at for 2.5 hours on the panel, I was like, I don't know if I want to talk to nobody. But it was needed.
Well, welcome to the NABJ board. It's been going on. I was on the board back in the late 80s and early 90s, and we've always been yelled at, right? So
yeah, I know. I was on the board before, and I remember there's been some fun meetings.
Yeah. Well, it's a board. Yeah, we represent journalists, and all I can say is, God bless us all. It's what we love NABJ, and we've been a part of it for so long, and certainly the conference is always that rejuvenation for all of us. And I think virtually, it's only helped us stay that much more connected, and hopefully use more of our tools to really do what we do best: raise questions, ask more questions, get better answers, and hold everyone accountable to those actions, and have good conversations and learn from each other. That's what we do.
Yeah. It's an NABJ in a nutshell is a big family reunion, but with a whole bunch of education, a lot of education, guys, a lot of education, and networking and job opportunities too, right?
Yeah. That's amazing. I mean, the programming itself is top notch. I've attended so many seminars, the ones that I could get to, and events that is just fantastic. So I love NABJ too. And just like any good family, you love hard and you fight hard. And that's just the way it is. Like, I love my brother, but sometimes I want to choke that boy so bad. Like, that's just, but I'll fight anybody else who says anything about him.
That's right. That's nobody else say anything about NABJ, because I'll be mad.
Right. That is so true.
Oh, this is a soror. Okay, hey, I don't know who that is, but
okay. Well, I love it.
Wonderful. Okay, Dr. K, he lied, obfuscated, deflected, insulted, outright refused to answer questions, fact checking, needed to be live in real time. He wasn't held accountable. I don't know. I beg to differ. I think he was. I beg to disagree, Dr. K. I think that he was, by virtue of the outcome of what happened afterwards, after the show. Oh, great. I'm glad. Oh, good. I'm so glad that you guys listen. We want to reach everybody. And you know what? The thing is, when you look at this interview and anything other information, you have an opportunity to fact check it yourself and see what's what. But this was an authentic conversation. I'm so sad that Ron Carter, my other fraternity brother of Phi Beta Sigma with Rod, was unable. He had a lot of technical difficulties, but he did participate a little bit in the chat. Yeah. And I'll have to do another show to make sure that Ron is on here.
Now imagine all the emails that we get back and forth in the fraternity that
I can't imagine. I can't. Both you life members too. Oh my God. That is crazy.
He's super life. I'm just regular.
Okay. Well, listen, guys. Ooh, 9:24. We went a whole 24 minutes over. Listen, I guess that's the advantage of doing your own show, right? We can do that. Yep. I appreciate you, Rod Carter and Neil Foote. Neil, you've muted yourself. I thank you all so much for coming, and don't be a stranger. Come back some other time. And I appreciate you guys so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Enjoyed the conversation. Thanks, Pam. Thanks, everyone, for your questions and comments. Looking forward to keeping the conversation going.
All right, let's wave them off. See you guys.